You thought he was done? You thought the takes were too hot to handle? You better think again. He's back with even more scorching opinions, more controversial predictions, and the kind of truth bombs that only Zain Bando can deliver. If you missed the first round, prepare yourself. This is the follow-up you've been waiting for. It's time for Zan Zinger Part 2, another certified hit from the Empty the Bench Network. Here's your host, Zain Bando.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Zain Zinger Part 2, a live edition on this Wednesday afternoon. For some, it's Wednesday morning on the West Coast as well. My name is Zain Bando. Hope you all are doing well. Shout out to the 67 people who are already in the stream this morning and or afternoon, wherever you might be. Before we get into everything that we're going to be talking about today with our special guest, which I may have teased on the last episode of Bando's breakdowns as well. Before we get into anything, just a few quick reminders. Please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the Empty the Bench podcast. Remember to do so. Please go to youtube.com/ETB Network. Would be greatly appreciated. We just recently surpassed 1,100 subscribers. If you could go support us, it would be greatly appreciated. And for those of you who are watching this stream on our multiple different X platforms and on YouTube as well, it would be very much appreciated if you guys gave us a shout over there too, as we just went live. We'll be live for about the next 35 to 40 minutes or so as well. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you guys checked us out. And of course, you can follow the flagship show across social media at Bando's Breakdown. That's where all the clips live, reels live, and so much more. So it would be greatly appreciated if you guys checked that out as well. And just as a quick reminder as well, you can listen to the main show, Bando's Breakdown, wherever you get your podcast. And right now, we have about 69 or so people in the stream right now. So greatly appreciate if you guys are following along on X. It means a lot. And of course, without further ado, I'm excited to bring in who is going to be our special guest today. It's Ben Stevens of VSiN. Very excited to join him. He'll be in here in just a minute. But again, this was kind of a impromptu live stream we put together, and looking forward to seeing where this may take us. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. All right. Happy to be bringing in Ben Stevens. Ben, how are you today?
Zan, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me here. Love the quarter zip. Love the attire that you are rocking, supporting the great Big Ten Conference. You can see the Big Ten pennants behind me. So happy to be joining you here on this Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for joining me. And yeah, I love your pennants. Do you have all 18, or is that about 15 there or so that I can see?
18, some covered by my shoulders, just the way that the shot is lined up. For instance, and of course, Illinois right there on my other side. Penn State still organized. I have not updated the background as necessarily so. Still organized by the final Big Ten football standings from the 2025 season.
So I assume you're going to rearrange them in whatever order until the season begins, and then you're going to start all over again?
Amen. Yes, I will probably rearrange them. Maybe we'll do a little Big Ten basketball, something of the sort, or maybe the projected Big Ten preseason poll by the time we get to the summer and we need to start filling things up.
Very, very cool. I actually had no idea that was your background. I'm so used to your old one that I think it's really cool that you were able to spark these things up a little bit. And I think that's awesome. You may end up needing a few more pennants if the Big Ten decides to expand to 22 or 24 or something like that, right?
Yeah, I hope that does not happen, Zan, because we have seen enough expansion, both in conference realignment and, of course, with the big news in college hoops yesterday, the NCAA tournament set to expand to 76 teams in 2027. Expansion in collegiate athletics, in my opinion, needs to come to a very firm and fast halt.
So, I would 100% agree with you. And that was kind of the first question I was going to lead off with. So you are certainly of the camp that you think it's a bad idea. And given that we've had about under 24 hours to dissect everything, it's kind of your overall thoughts and your initial takeaways.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible idea, Zan. I really do. I think the general consensus, you're not going to find many topics across this country that this many people agree on in favor of not expanding the NCAA tournament. There are many reasons why I understand what the NCAA is doing. More games, its own unique platform, that means TV revenue. And in this age of college sports, you are always trying to drive the engine that is the monetary figure. And adding a first 12, or as they plan to call it, at least by reports, the opening round of 12 matchups between 24 teams on those Tuesday and Wednesday, leading into the round of 64, is going to generate more of an investment from a TV network partner in terms of all the finances that come with it. It's an understandable thing. You might not agree with it. You might not even tolerate it, but you can understand, at least from the fiscal perspective, why decisions in college sports are made the way they are. Now let's get to the brass tacks of its implications. And of course, as it is inputted next season. One, it completely devalues the regular season, as we have seen the projections and what the 2026 first 12 or opening round would have looked like, Zan. We saw 8 more teams joining those first 4 that we already saw play at the high major level on the 11 seed, on the 11 line, of course, this past March in Dayton. Of the 8 teams that enter, only 1 is from a mid-major conference, and that's San Diego State out of the Mountain West. Nobody of those 7 high major teams had an above 500 record in conference play. Everybody at 500 or worse in their respective leagues. Oklahoma and Auburn out of the SEC. Multiple teams from the Big 12. Arizona State only a game above 500 overall. Oklahoma State, even a team out of the Big 10 in Indiana that was certainly not deserving of NCAA tournament consideration. Part 1 kind of goes into point number 2. This does not open the door or provide more access for mid-major programs. It is only going to be based on the selection criteria we have seen the NCAA tournament committee use, mainly for those high major programs that are going to continue to proliferate this opening round. So for many, many reasons, and I am not a fan of NCAA tournament expansion. I do not believe the best postseason in all of sports, not just collegiately, needed any updates at this time. Of course, it is for the money. It is for the TV revenue. It is not for the betterment of the sport of college basketball. In fact, I think it detracts.
Yeah, I think that's all. I think that's all well said for sure. So you do think overall the number one underlining reason why they're doing this is just to generate as much TV revenue as they can. Is that right?
Yes, it is, Ann. It's the reason that everything happens in college athletics. It's the reason that we have seen conference realignment. It's the reason that Oklahoma and Texas started this latest round back in the early 2020s. To join the SEC is a part of the Disney deal that was, at that time, the largest. It is why the 4 West Coast schools of Oregon, UCLA, USC, and Washington departed the Pac-12, leaving that conference behind and in the dirt, and have joined the Big Ten. It is why everything is happening right now in collegiate athletics. It is for the almighty TV dollar, because networks are looking to invest. It gives us, as the fan, more things to watch, and thus the network itself can profit in many different ways. I understand it. It is always how this system works. It is not just college sports or professional sports. It's life. It is the economy. You are trying to earn as much dollars as you can with as many TV eyeballs as you are willing to. And the one thing that continues to move the needle when it comes to those TV revenue dollars is going to be live programming. It is going to be live sports. And if you can offer up more of a quantity of it, your product goes on the increase, of which the opening round or first 12 is going to be. As it pertains to the NCAA tournament, that means more money.
I would argue that this isn't going to be the a major domino to drop within the next couple of years. Would you agree that more things like this are coming? Just in terms of the institutions and just down the pipeline in general, because I could easily see it happening.
Yeah, I think that's a very real fear for a lot of sports fans, Zan, who really focus only on the sport. We want to talk about our favorite teams and our favorite games and the biggest matchups. All the excess noise on the periphery just kind of adds to detracting from the actual game, from what we want to watch. So yes, I agree. It almost feels like it's a domino effect, as you alluded to. You open up a small sliver of a door, and that crack then becomes a wide open entrance. So I could see further expansion in the NCAA tournament, further opening rounds. I don't think we're just stopping at 76. If you can go from 64 to 68 to 76, then we've got a pretty good chance that will continue at least in the next 10 to 15 years. The first four became a firm thing, by the way, in the big dance back in 2011. So we had that for about a decade and a half. Now we move up to 76. I think we are going to see it in the college football playoff. Of course, there has been considerable conversation around expansion from 12 teams to 16. The Big Ten, of which a model I absolutely hate, has offered up a 24-team CFP. Again, all of that is for more TV partners to invest more revenue and more money, making everybody a little bit richer.
I would like to see the college football playoff go to 16. What do you think?
I don't mind necessarily 12 to 16. I do not love the 24-team model that features automatic qualifiers from every conference. Yeah, I don't love the 24-team model by any means. 16 doesn't necessarily make me all that angry, just because we have already expanded from 12 to 16. But Zain, I think there's a common misconception when it comes to the expansion. Some of those debates about bubble teams in the big dance, or for instance, the last few at-large bids to a college football playoff. If we open up more, it gets rid of some of the highly contested debate for those last teams to enter the field. I offer the contrary. We're kind of splitting hairs on teams that are not worthy of a bid in the first place and teams that are not deserving of a chance to compete for a national championship. And those debates and that fervor continue, so it doesn't really solve any of the issues that we might have with a current format. That will continue with 16 teams, regardless of what that necessarily looks like. I don't mind 16 teams in the college football playoff. I don't mind 12. I didn't love 4. I like the idea of expansion in some instance from the original decade of the 4-team college football playoff in college football. I hope it does not get to 24 again with the automatic qualifier model that has been presented, at least reported on to this point.
For sure, and that was something that I wanted to mention too, because I think there's also the fear too, Ben, of just the future of maybe conference tournaments not looking the same as they should, just because there's going to be so much emphasis on the 76 teams. So do we think that conference tournaments are going to change, or if at all, just in terms of stakes or importance? Because now it seems like with everybody playing into them almost, it feels like the stakes are being a little bit lowered. That's just sort of how I view it. I sort of do enjoy the old school way of how things used to be. We'll obviously never get that again, but how do you kind of view that whole perspective as they sort of kind of bump up into one another as selection Sunday usually does on a yearly basis?
Yeah, Zan, I think it's a great question, and I think it's a very fair point. If you are a true college basketball fan, the 2 weeks of conference tournament action, the second week, actually my least favorite of the two, that's all the high majors. I love the mid-majors, trying to earn that automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. I'll touch on the mid-major leagues around this country in just a matter of moments. From the high major perspective, it will be interesting to see how an expanded field of 76 teams, what that looks like from the selection criteria, because we have been told often by the committee they've basically got their field of 68 with a couple of teams that might move up or down a spot in terms of the seed order and the seed list, based on the results of conference tournaments, that they don't really have that big of an impact. It's 3 games in 3 days when you have a sample size of 28 or 30 games prior that really kind of fits the model of what they are looking at. It will be really interesting then, though, if you have teams like this past year, Auburn and Oklahoma in the SEC tournament, Indiana in the Big Ten tournament, Arizona State, Oklahoma State, others, of course, throughout, Cal in the ACC tournament. Are those games now in conference tournament play placed more of an emphasis, or will it not matter for those teams contending for a bubble spot to be in the field of 76? So I think it will be really interesting, because if more of an emphasis is placed on conference tournament week, then we take away more from the regular season. If you can go 7-11 in your 18-game conference slate, but win 3 games in 3 days and get a couple of quad one wins in these loaded high major leagues, and that allows you to join a field of 76 when you really had no chance to join a field of 68, that will be a different way for coaches and programs to kind of expend their resources in terms of trying to get an NCAA tournament berth. I don't love it, right? I love the idea of stakes being there for conference tournament games as it stands. And Sam, one thing I really dislike about the expansion of 76 is, as I mentioned, it doesn't open up more access for mid-major teams. We're not going to have a multiple bid Missouri Valley Conference or a multiple bid Sun Belt Conference or any of that in my estimation. But you're going to have the champions of said smaller leagues now have to play in the opening round, regardless of what they do. We are going to see all of the 16 seeds play in the opening round. We are going to see half of the 15 seeds. So we'll have 8 16 seeds now. So teams that might have been worthy of a 15 seed in the past structure probably get bumped back a seed line. And we're going to have 6 15 seeds overall fill out this field of 76. Those teams are going to have to battle for spots in the opening round, where if you have one bad night, you're not deserving of the chance to get to the big dance. And even some of those moments like Siena and its first half lead against Duke in this year's 2026 NCAA tournament, where 15 seeds who up until recently here, as we get chalkier and chalkier in the NCAA tournament, have pulled off numerous and multiple upsets over 2 seeds. Those teams might not have the opportunity because they've had to play on Tuesday and Wednesday. Sure, they can win that NCAA tournament game for their program benefit and the financial incentive, but it's a much harder turnaround on 48 hours notice to go match up against a team from a high major conference that is either on the 1 or 2 line. So for multiple different reasons, Zan, when it comes to conference tournament week, because of the expansion to 76 teams and the NCAA tournament, I'm certainly not in favor.
Well, all said, and shout out to the 100 people who have already tuned in as we sort of move through this here. Besides, obviously, the conference tournament expansion, I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought was the biggest overall surprise or takeaway just from the NCAA tournament, or the overall college basketball season as we get deeper and deeper into the off season and get ever so slowly but closer to the November. Just wanted to get your quick thoughts on that before we move on to a few more substantial topics, since I know you have very limited time today. And again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Ann. Appreciate chopping up. Appreciate the questions that you are asking. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this college basketball season kind of pertains to what we see at the end. The course to a national championship really running through those very established high major teams. And of course, not seeing many upsets in the rounds of 64 and rounds of 32 like we have been accustomed to in NCAA tournaments prior. I think that is only going to continue in a field of 76. We are seeing chalkier March Madness than a tournament that has often been defined for its chaos. There are a few reasons why. Of course, NIL, the transfer portal era, you can continue to get those guys from lower leagues, different programs, working their way up for the big spots. But I also think, Zan, we have seen in the last 3 to 5 college basketball seasons a complete reversal in how we think of efficiency metrics in college basketball. With your alma mater and Illinois, we have seen Brad Underwood and his son Tyler really update the style of play the Fighting Illini have played, where we have seen teams now look incredibly efficient on both ends of the floor. It is stylistically, just because they have better players, a huge disadvantage then for those mid-major leagues, who teams like the Wofford teams under Mike White with Storm Murphy and Fletcher McGee that could shoot the 3 and shoot the crap out of it better than anybody else. They don't really have those advantages any longer because of the efficiency numbers offensively, mainly against these teams that just have far superior talent. That will be something, of course, to follow into 2027 in the first field of 76 NCAA tournament, as it seems. And one other thing that I would highlight as this offseason continues to play out. Teams that have attacked the transfer portal, how that looks. Of course, Michigan was the first ever national champion in this new era to have a starting 5 completely made up of transfers who played at a different school the year prior. but not just necessarily what you are doing in the transfer portal, but as a great college basketball follow in Trilly Donovan continues to say, sometimes the best gets are the ones that you already have. So mentioning Illinois and the return of all of the Balkan boys, of David Mirkovic, of the Ivasic brothers, of more than likely Andrei Stojakovic as well. The retention in Champaign is going to make Illinois a top 3 team in the preseason poll. Michigan, because of what Dusty May does, has attacked the transfer portal in the biggest way. JP Estrella, one of the keys in terms of those bigs making their way to Ann Arbor this upcoming year. So what will be really interesting in this new era of college sports, we have seen it with the NBA draft, only 67 entrants or 76, one of the two, 76 or 67 has been a big number the last few days. Only 67 entrants into the 2026 NBA draft, the fewest that we have seen now in over 2 decades because of that NIL money in college hoops. The best players in college basketball are choosing to maybe even forego a mid-first round draft pick to stay in college basketball because they can make a decent amount of money and still play for a program they love. So there's a lot of talent in college hoops, but as that talent filters its way up, of course, the rich keep getting richer.
For sure. And we sort of move away from college basketball for at least a little bit. I would assume that you would probably agree with the notion that even in the midst of all the chaos in college basketball, that it's been, I would say, arguably a more exciting product than it ever has been, because I've noticed it the last few years where the talent and the quality of games just continues to get better and better and better. And I was wondering if you felt similarly, differently, when people say that this version of college basketball is actually a little bit more exciting because of its unpredictability.
Yes, and I think it's a great point, right? Dichotomy is a difficult thing for people to understand. You can dislike something, but also like something at the same time. Those two things can live in harmony. I can dislike the fact that we see fewer Cinderella or magical mid-major runs in the NCAA tournament. But because of that, as we go to the second point, we are going to see elite matchups between the best basketball teams as we get into those later rounds. And you have such high quality games, whether in the NCAA tournament, conference tournament week, or throughout the regular season, because of some of that talent and the efficiency that we mentioned stylistically, playing at the highest levels throughout the entirety of a 30-game college basketball season. Yes, I think the games that we are seeing are awesome. And it is, of course, incredibly compelling. So it's one of my favorite things about college sports, whether it's college basketball, college football. You could insert X sport here, really, in today's current collegiate athletic climate. When you get to the off season of any sport, like the NCAA tournament expansion conversation, or college football playoff or conference realignment talks in college football that proliferate in the months of April, May, and June, it's almost this doomsday approach. But then you think about actually sitting down on your couch on a Saturday in October, and you're happy again, watching the actual games themselves. You're sitting down on your couch and you're watching 6 games on a Tuesday night at the high major level during the end of January in college hoops. You are still enjoying the actual product itself. We're still raising, I think, some fair concerns and questions about the future of the sports that we know and love.
And then kind of moving away from the hardwood to the gridiron now, USA Today recently released its way too early top 25 rankings, and it got a lot of fanfare online, both from an agreement standpoint and from a disagreement standpoint. Just looking at the Big Ten teams that made it, you have Ohio State at number 1, you have Indiana at number 5, you have Oregon as a top 10 team, you have USC in there, you have Michigan in there, Penn State in there, and Iowa in there. Which teams do you think USA Today missed, or do we think that USA Today got most of these teams right? Because a lot of people think, or at least some that I've seen, are saying that it's the worst way too early top 25 they've ever seen, and it's only April 29th, with several months to go. But I figured that you would have a reaction to this, which is why I'm asking it.
Yeah, I've seen USA Today. I've seen others that list Indiana at number 7 in the nation. I'm a little bit perplexed by Indiana, the reigning national champions, completing the first 16-0 season in college football in the modern era since the Yale Bulldogs of the late 1800s. And I understand how things work in Bloomington. It is a restocking from the transfer portal. But I think now Curt Cignetti, unlike after the 2024 campaign for his Hoosiers, has earned the benefit of the doubt, if there is even a doubt or any bit of uncertainty left. I think Indiana is a top 3 or top 5 team in the country at bare minimum entering the 2026 college football season. And I know there are a ton of new parts, mainly a new quarterback in Josh Hoover, but it's been the example that Indiana has set now in its 2, entering year 3, under Curt Cignetti. Curtis Rourke, Fernando Mendoza, who won a Heisman Trophy and was the first overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, and Josh Hoover, who is incredibly talented, filled with a lot of talent around him in those skill position sets. Nick Marsh from Michigan State. Of course, Charlie Becker is back for IU as well. Turbo Richard from Boston College, I think, is a sensational plug. A lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. Joshua Barnum from Notre Dame making its way to Indiana as well. A couple of lethal defensive linemen from Kansas State. I think Indiana is restocked and reloaded, and any way too early top 25 that has the Hoosiers outside of the top 5, or let alone maybe even the top 3, I would disagree with. I think Ohio State is deserving of being there at number 1 in the country. And Zain, I think you will see around the top 5, teams like Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, earn the benefit of the doubt because of the returning talent at the quarterback position. Julian Sayin is back for the Buckeyes. Gunnar Stockton is back for the Bulldogs. Of course, we will have some Arch Manning fervor entering 2026 again as well. It is part of the beauty of college football right now. Maybe some guys that would have tested the draft waters are back, and you have that returning production in college football. It doesn't necessarily mean that the expectations of what you bring back at the quarterback spot will be met as the actual season plays out, but it makes a lot of sense. And Ohio State has the best player in all of college football in Jeremiah Smith. Oregon is going to be great again. Dante Moore being back there, albeit with a new offensive coordinator. I am trusting in what the Ducks are going to do. There is a team I think that will be on the outside of the top 25 because of a chaotic offseason, but still returning talent at the quarterback position. A guy I really would consider a Heisman contender, or at least Heisman caliber in terms of his play, would be Damon Williams at Washington. Keep an eye on the Huskies, who bring back a lot around Damon despite losing Jonah Coleman on that offensive side of the football. That would be maybe a Big Ten team that did not make it into USA Today's top 25 that one I would insert into the conversation.
Would you also argue, although this may be a stretch for some, do you think that it's being undervalued a little bit, that Illinois won 19 games in the last 2 seasons and that they still didn't make the way too early top 25 for USA Today specifically?
It's an interesting thing when you have preseason rankings, right? It has to reward what you have done, but it's also a projection of what you are about to do in that upcoming college football campaign. I am a big believer in Brett Bielema. The guy just wins, especially within the Big Ten Conference. And I really, really enjoy what the Illini did in the transfer portal this offseason, namely at the quarterback spot and getting Caden Hauser, a guy who, of course, started his career in East Lansing at Michigan State, had some great success at East Carolina, now has made his way to Champaign. And although you have a lot of changing faces from a team that returned 17 starters a year ago, and that's why I thought they were deserving of being included in a preseason poll in the top 15, a lot of that has changed now in Champaign, but you still have the same guys leading the way, mostly in your coaching staff. Of course, with Bobby Hauck being there on the defensive side of the football, taking over long-time and successful head coach at Montana, making his way now to that defensive side of the football. I'm not surprised, Zan, that Illinois is not included in a preseason top 25 or a way too early ranking in the top 25 for 2026 in college football. But I do believe they can be a team to win 8-9 games in the Big Ten this year. And if you are flirting with that the entirety of the season, you will also be flirting with a ranking and a number next to your name for a good majority of the campaign.
Currently, you very well said, and that kind of is actually a perfect segue into this one. I know it's very difficult for any team to replicate what Indiana did this past season, but if there was one Big Ten team that you think could take that sort of Indiana leap or even come remotely close in their own version, of which team would it be at least this season, and why? And is it one of these surprise teams that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, maybe outside of Washington or Illinois or what have you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because last year it almost felt like who could be that team out of nowhere in the Big Ten Conference to mirror what Indiana did in 2024. Illinois was my prediction for that. I think some of the teams, Zan, that when you look at 2026 that could be a college football playoff contender don't necessarily have to break the history that teams like IU or Illinois in football did in 2024 and 25. Here's a couple of names, of course, to pay attention to. I really like what Tim Lester has done in his first 2 years as the offensive coordinator in Iowa City. I'm really excited to see how that quarterback battle plays out for the Hawks. Jeremy Heklinski kind of leading the way, it seems, following spring ball in Iowa City. There's so much talent returning defensively along that offensive line. They have to make some changes, but I really trust in what Tim Lester is doing. I think Iowa within the top 25, as you mentioned, could be in a really good position this year to flirt maybe with 10 wins and make that leap to really being in the college football playoff conversation in the final few weeks of November. I don't necessarily think they are going to contend for the college football playoff, but keep an eye on Minnesota. Drake Lindsey back for the Golden Gophers, a returning talent at the quarterback production, a young guy last year as a redshirt freshman that saw a lot and produced a lot with a full season under PJ Fleck to take that leap. Of course, Corey Parrish makes his way to Eugene. That will hurt the Gophers on that side of the football. But I really do think Minnesota is going to be, as they have consistently been, a team that is around 7 to 8 wins by the end of the season. It was really surprising to none, but the consistency of row the boat there in the Twin Cities for PJ Fleck and his Gophers. I don't necessarily know if there is a team, Zan, that last year had a losing record or last year was maybe 7-5, 8-4 that makes a tremendous leap to flirt with double-digit wins outside of the names that we mentioned. I guess you could say because of Matt Campbell taking over in Happy Valley and basically bringing everybody from Ames with him to State College, Pennsylvania, namely the quarterback in Rocco Becht. Penn State has way too much history and far too many expectations to just think of that they're going to make an Indiana-type leap in a college football season.
For sure, but to counter you there, I will say that if things break right for Penn State, the schedule is very favorable.
Very favorable.
I think it's very much not a 9 or 10 win potential situation there, and the kind of things out because we're so focused on the Big Ten football season now. It came out this past week that Fox is retaining the rights to the Big Ten championship. It looked like NBC was trying to make a push for it, but Fox said no, thank you. We'd like to keep it. Any initial reactions or takeaways to this, and could you see Fox maybe taking on a stranglehold of some other conference things that maybe we aren't sort of thinking about? Because now in this new era of Big Ten football, I always think of Fox as the premier network for some of these major Big Ten games, and I wonder if you think that this is going to be a continuation for the long haul or not.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Zan, that when you look at college football, and again, from the revenue perspective, that has led to many of these changes in realignment and potential expansion of the college football playoff, you kind of have the two powers that be within the power conferences, the Big Ten and its media partnership with Fox, the SEC and its media partnership with Disney/ESPN. I don't necessarily know how much more invested Fox can be within the Big Ten, owning a majority stake of the Big Ten Conference, and of course, being that main media rights holder as a part of the three, along with CBS and NBC in their huge $7 billion media deal that was signed a few years ago. What I will think is that Fox has continued to be invested in college football. It has paid dividends for the network as a whole. What I would love to see is in the conversation of the next expansion of the college football playoff, that this current TV media rights deal, if I am not mistaken, runs through 2030, where ESPN is that main shareholder, that Fox gets involved. I think that will be a benefit for the sport if games are aired on both ESPN and Fox, that some of the biases, even if they are just perceived and not in reality happening to a selection committee, will at least be ironed out a little bit more, and you would have some balance across the sport as opposed to one media network kind of owning the entirety of the college football playoff. We see it at the professional level in basically every sport. The NBA has its playoff games on every different network, Prime, NBC, ESPN, doesn't matter. We see it in the NFL with its main media partners. When you can divvy out the most important games, that being postseason and playoff games, to a variety of networks, especially in this new climate of college football, I think it's for the betterment of the fan. It might actually be for the betterment of what we see on the field.
Well, and then the final question that I have for you, this afternoon or morning, wherever you may be listening to this, is with the NFL draft having just passed in Pittsburgh, and it's with the record attendance, and it's given kind of how unpredictable the draft was for a Big Ten perspective. Of what were your overall 2 or 3 biggest takeaways that you had from the 3-day extravaganza this past week? And does this get you even more excited for how good the 2027 class could potentially be, because I think a lot of people have already moved on to next April to see how unbelievable that draft could potentially become, which I'm very, very excited about.
Of course, yeah, the 2027 class is going to be ridiculous. I think there is incredible wide receiver talent, namely Jeremiah Smith leading the way, Cam Coleman from Auburn. Keep an eye on Nick Marsh from Indiana and Charlie Becker as well. Of course, we always look forward to a quarterback class. We'll see if the expectation that next year's quarterback class is actually lived up to by the time we get to April of 2027. A couple of main takeaways from me from the 2026 NFL draft. Of course, the history made by Indiana, 8 players selected in its 7 rounds, the most in program history for the Hoosiers, moving past the 7 that were selected back in the 1976 NFL draft. And we saw 3 of those guys in the top 50. That, of course, a record for IU as well. That talent level remains in Bloomington. One of the reasons that we discussed earlier, Zan, I think Indiana is a surefire top 3 or top 5 team when you look at the preseason early projections of a top 25. I really love what the Chicago Bears did, tapping into the Big Ten Conference with their first 2 selections. I think Dylan Thieneman on the defensive side of the football in that safety spot, first at Purdue, then at Oregon, is going to be an absolute game breaker for this Dennis Allen defense for the Bears that will only help them and their NFL prospects, of course, after a very successful first year under Ben Johnson. And I love what they did in going after Logan Jones. To me, the center from Iowa, the Remington Award winner as the best interior lineman in college football in 2025, is going to be a plug-and-play immediate guy for the Chicago offensive line, whose I would not be surprised if the year is 2036 and we are still having the same conversations about Logan Jones in the middle for Chicago, of course, developed by George Barnett, Kirk Ferentz, and everybody in Iowa City. I think the Cleveland Browns had a really, really great draft, although not a Big Ten player. Also in the back end of that secondary, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo, I think is an absolute stud. What Cleveland has done, which you don't often highlight what the Browns do well or in a positive manner, I think is a really, no, you do not. So that's a very positive thing for Cleveland as well. And one other name I would highlight, Gabe Akis, of course, from Illinois, I think is going to be a game wrecker in the National Football League, a man that just gets after the quarterback. I believe Akis, if I'm not mistaken, Zan, went to New England, correct? He's with the Patriots?
That would be correct. Yep,
yeah,
you got it.
I think that's going to be a great thing for that young defensive line for the Pats. And then another name, of course, is Elijah Surratt making his way as a day 3 pick, which was a little bit surprising to me, to Baltimore. I think when the Ravens look at what they have in terms of the weapons utilized for Lamar Jackson, they have had some great wide receivers. They've had some speedsters that kind of can do a variety of everything. To me, Elijah Surratt is a premier downfield player, a big body on the outside. I think Lamar should be very happy to have him at his disposal for 2026.
Well, I think those are all solid takeaways. Now, I was just curious to try to get you out on this one stat that kind of blew me away, and I'm sure it blew you away too. It's the first time since 1978 that Wisconsin didn't have a player selected. Do we think this is just sort of the sign of the times, or do we think that Wisconsin is going through a rebuild that we don't even realize is as bad as it could potentially get over the next few years? I was curious as to what you thought about that.
Yeah, Zan, I think it's not surprising necessarily if you have watched the Wisconsin Badgers in the last few years under Luke Fickell, who I believe, just based on the talent that returns to Madison this year and some of the buy-in for the Badgers, the investment into Luke Fickell for year 4, the roster retention that they have seen, mainly on that defensive side of the football, guys like Mason Posa making his way back, who will be incredibly talented for Wisconsin. I think that we are going to see further draft picks in the future, but with where Wisconsin has been in the last few years based on that talent level, especially at the quarterback position and all the injuries there in Madison, it is not all that surprising. I would say, although it might not be a stunner that Wisconsin did not have a player drafted when it's the first time in nearly a half century, of course it should be a storyline and it should be a narrative, and it will be one that Luke Fickell has to change in year number 4. There will be many things that Fickell in his 4th year in Madison has to figure out and immediately improve on in the 2026 season. So that's how I would look at it. Not necessarily a nail in the coffin or something that was out of left field that is a true statement about Luke Fickell's program there for the Wisconsin Badgers. Just something that kind of goes in harmony, or at least in conjunction with what we have seen the last few years in Madison, Wisconsin, and needs to be flipped on its head immediately in 2026.
Well, it's very well said. And just to kind of get you out on this, I'll let you have the floor for the final couple of minutes for those that want to continue to follow your excellent work that you do, or just any other fun and exciting projects that you have coming up. Feel free to say where people can find you. And again, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it.
Zan, thank you so much for having me. I work for VSiN. It is a company that broadcasts a ton, and I work mainly on the weekend in our programming Saturdays and Sundays. It's called Live Bet Saturday, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can watch it on YouTube TV, listen on the radio, Sirius XM, channel 158, the VSiN Watch app, all of that good stuff. And of course, with all the Big Ten pennants behind me, I host a show both available on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform called Big Ten Breakdown. That's in a little bit of an off-season hiatus, but certainly will ramp up again here in just a few weeks as we look at what happened during spring ball, get ready for fall camp and a new season in college football.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to hearing all of that, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. It's always a pleasure to be able to catch up, and thank you so much for coming on. And shout out to the 100 people that listen to us today. You guys are great, and I look forward to hopefully doing this much more in the future. Thank you again, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Zan. Keep up the great work, man. You're killing it.
Thank you. It's very, very kind, and given that I'm in sort of my off-season hibernation, that really, really means a lot. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much to Ben for coming, and that will wrap it up for another edition of Zinger Part 2. Shout out to the 100 plus people that tuned into today's stream. There's a good chance that we will be back on Sunday as well at our usual time to talk about everything in the world of sports. But until then, we'll catch you guys soon. And for those who are following our live coverage schedule today, please be sure to tune in to Press Row. That's coming up in about 20 or so minutes. But until then, have a good one. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you guys soon. One other thing as well. For those who may have forgotten, Bando's Breakdowns comes out tomorrow. That would be 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, back to the regular Friday schedule as well. But thank you so much again to Ben for coming on. Thank you so much for his time. We will catch you guys soon. Have a good one, everyone.